Next, mental and behavioral disorders due to substance use. Here we will be learning on few points. I'll be explaining in detail step by step, like in remission, use, abuse, dependence, unspecified. For all the things we'll be learning in detail. First, let's go with in remission. We have separate codes for in remission. Let's take an example. If the patient is alcohol abuse, and if there is an in remission documented, please go with in remission because we have separate code for in remission. If we go through or look the code series which were available in tabular list, you will be having a better idea of it. Next, use, abuse and dependence. Use of anything like alcohol, tobacco, cocaine, opioid, marijuana or cannabis, whatever it might be, any drug. Here that is categorized into three parts: use, abuse, dependence. You need to remember these three things: use, abuse and dependence. Use means the patient is using that drug. Let's take an example. Patient uses alcohol once in a month. He uses. Patient has alcohol abuse. That means he abused to that drug or substance. And dependence. Patient is dependent on it. Without that he cannot survive. That is called dependence. And one more thing is there. We'll discuss that thing in coming points. But make sure we have another point here. And here you need to remember one key point. If let's take an example. If the documentation states, one document states use of alcohol, another document states abuse of alcohol, another document states dependence of alcohol. In this case, do we need to code all three codes? Just think. I'll be giving 2 seconds. 1 and 2. If this is your question, whether we need to code 3 or not, whether we need to code 3 codes or not, remember this key point here. If the documentation states use, go with use. If the documentation states use and abuse, go with abuse. If the documentation states use, abuse and dependence, go with dependence. If the documentation states abuse and dependence, go with dependence. This is the hierarchy of this. First, use, above to that abuse, above to that dependence. This is the key which you need to remember. Don't code all the conditions, all the abuse, all the use, all the dependence which were documented in your chart. Clear? Please make a note of it. This is the hierarchy you need to maintain. Any kind of drug, whether it might be cocaine, whether it might be marijuana, whether it might be nicotine, whether it might be alcohol, whatever it might be. These are the things you need to remember. First one is in remission. Next, use, abuse and dependence. Next, unspecified. Unspecified. For all the conditions there are unspecified codes. But here you need to be more careful, because here if you go with unspecified code, it will lead to some other code which is use. So whenever there is a documentation by the physician states that this drug is due to this so and so condition, so and so behavioral condition, then you can code, or else we cannot code these conditions at any cost. It purely depends on documentation. And in this chapter, not only in this chapter, you need to remember one thing: whenever you are coding any code from alphabetical as well as tabular list, remember to focus exclude notes, exclude 1 and exclude 2, include inclusion notes. You need to focus on this as well. It doesn't matter just you are going with code. You need to look into the description available in that tabular list or alphabetical index, stating that do we have any other guideline, any other suggestion, any other modification, any other add-on codes need to be there. Everything will be covered in those books. Please remember that as well.